Dear speakers, I would like to ask you to stand for a group photo. Please stand up for a group photo, please. Okay, please take your seats. Your Excellencies, dear guests, my name is Daniyar Kaziev. I'm the Executive Director of the Russia-ASEAN Business Council. So we are starting now. I'm pleased to welcome you at our round table called the Strengthening of ASEAN and Eurasian Economic Union Ties, the Role of Business Communities. Before the beginning of our roundtable, I would like to introduce our honorable speakers. His Excellency, Mr. Sergei Glazyev, the member of the board, the Minister for Integration and Macroeconomics of Eurasian Economic Commission. Thank you. Ms. Latifaida Abdul Latif, Assistant Director, Head of Analysis and Monitoring on Finance and Socio-Economic Division of ASEAN Secretariat. His Excellency Dmitry Volvach, Deputy Minister of Economic Development of the Russian Federation. He is joining us online. Mr. Ivan Polyakov, Chairman of the Russia-ASEAN Business Council. Dr. Nuki Agia-Utama, Executive Director of ASEAN Center for Energy. Mr. Didi Tratam, the head of the Bilateral Committee for Russia, Georgia, Serbia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina, Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Also, Mrs. Amor Maklang, the convener of the Digital Filipinas. She is also joining us online. And our dearest Ms. Hanzela Kusumamengala, founder and CEO of Mana Indonesia Group. Thank you, everyone. So, I hope that everyone is back from our marvelous lunch and we can start our roundtable. Today, we will try to discuss the incentives and incentives to deepen and diversify of our trade and economic cooperation for establishing new opportunities for business in our countries. And I would like to give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Sergei Glazyev, the member of the board, the Minister for Integration and Macroeconomics of the EEC, for his welcome remarks. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dear colleagues, it is a great pleasure for me to start our dialogue today between representatives of government bodies, business communities, international organizations, and of course the key agenda of today's discussion is the creation of good opportunities for communications between business. Business in our market economies is a driving force of integration, of economic development, and what we are doing in the Eurasian Economic Commission is creating norms and regulations. As you know, Eurasian Economic Union is the custom union, first of all, and also it regulates the common economic space, including not only trade of goods, but also trade of services, technical regulation, sanitary norms, and so forth. We shall speak about our functions and how we implement them tomorrow. Today, I'd like to stress that the main goal of our regulation is to create comfortable conditions for the growth of business activity. And in this respect, what we are doing, we are trying, first of all, to remove trade barriers. And in order to remove these barriers between our companies, first of all, we removed the custom body. So there are no customs in our mutual trade. we implement the common technical regulation. We have the unified rules of sanitary norms, veterinary, and all norms which regulate the quality and security of the goods. We harmonize the government procurements, and we introduce the national regulation on the services, liberalizing the market of services. The major indicator of connectivity and cooperation, coherence between our countries is the share of mutual trade in the foreign trade of each country. This picture shows the share of mutual trade which was measured in export. So this share of export inside Union in the whole export of member countries. As you see, it is growing steadily, and the main driving force of the growth of mutual trade at the moment is cooperation between the companies, creation of mutual companies, joint ventures, and the improvement conditions for cooperation is the major goal of our activity today. Speaking about our relations with Indonesia, with ASEAN countries, including Indonesia, where we started the negotiations of foreign trade, and other countries of ASEAN, we should see the next slide, please. We see the steady growth of trade. Of course, the volume of trade is not too much, but we have the positive dynamics, which is more or less sustainable, except pandemic years. And especially last years, the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, we have the very fast growth of our mutual trade with ASEAN countries. The last year, this year, we expect the growth rates about 11% in comparison with the previous year. The previous year, the growth was about 1/3. What is the most important is the diversity of our trade flows becomes higher and higher. Of course, the major share of countries with whom we are trading inside ASEAN are those our traditional partners with whom we already have the free trade agreement, like Vietnam. As I mentioned, we are starting the free trade negotiations with Indonesia. We have free trade agreement with Singapore, I think that in the next 5 years, most of the ASEAN region will have the free trade arrangements with Eurasian Economic Union. Of course, the major idea of our today's discussion is how to use the new opportunities and new instruments to promote our trade and cooperation. The next slide please describes our major problematic, I should say, problematic spheres which we have to think about. Because of financial sanctions which were imposed by some countries against several countries of Eurasian Economic Union, we have to move faster in construction the new world financial architecture. We couldn't use American dollars, for instance, anymore because it is a toxic currency. You know that it's used as a political instrument to oppress our countries. We couldn't use euro as well, English pound, even Japanese yen, because all those currencies, which are so-called reserved currencies of the IMF, are not currencies anymore for Russia, for Belarus. We couldn't trade with these currencies, we couldn't accumulate reserves, we couldn't make investments. So we have to move to the national currencies. And inside the Eurasian Economic Union, we already, about more than 80% of mutual trade is done in national currencies. The Russian Central Bank offering its own payment system, which is open for all other banks in the world. And at the moment, a lot of foreign banks are using this payment system, the system of exchange in electronic messages, which we use instead of Visa or Master or SWIFT. We have also our own payment system on bank cards. And the only question is how fast we can propose to use these financial services for our partners. At the moment, almost all CIS countries are using these systems. Several Chinese banks, some Indian banks are thinking about using this system. And I suppose that in ASEAN countries it is very important to know that Russian monetary authorities provide such financial services that we can trade in national currencies and make payments, settlements free and in a safety way. Of course, the move to the national currencies create some problems which we have to solve together. For instance, we trade in national currencies, but the price formation is done on the main Western exchanges. The price for oil products, mineral fertilizers, wheat is formed in Western exchanges, and these prices are very unstable. Volatility is extremely high, and we are thinking now in our Eurasian Economic Union how to organize the common exchange of commodities and stabilize price mechanism. We couldn't rely on the prices which are formed by financial speculants. Like you remember, it happened in the year 2020 when the price of oil declined almost to zero and then jumped again to $100 per barrel. And next year, I suppose, we shall have the common exchange mechanism in Eurasian Economic Union, where all commodities could be traded in national currencies, and we elaborating now the price formation mechanism, which will be balance the demand and supply in our region. And I think it is very interesting initiative also for ASEAN countries, which import from our countries all those commodities. Another bottleneck which we think about is the transportation routes. Transportation, not only physical transportation, but also the use of services which are necessary for transportation of goods. Again, because of financial sanctions, we couldn't use now the Western insurance companies. And our partners in ASEAN should look for new insurance instruments for them, which are proposed by the Eurasian Economic Union countries. For instance, we formed recently the Eurasian insurance company and reinsurance mechanism, which not less reliable than Western insurance mechanisms. So these services are available, they can be used, but very few seaports or government regulators in ASEAN countries know about them. I personally discussed several times question how we can increase the export of oil and oil products to Asian region. And it was very surprising that we found that the main bottleneck was that seaports in Asian countries couldn't receive the Russian tankers because they don't know about Russian insurance services. And Russian tankers couldn't use Western insurance instruments. So in this sphere, we have to exchange more information to give our business communities understanding of the new opportunities which we have to use today because of changing of the world trade regulation. Finally, I'd like to dwell your attention towards digitalization, which becomes the major trend in all our regulation facilities. We use the electronic declaration in customs. We use a lot of data banks for trade promotion. We are planning to have the second seminar with ASEAN concerning the digital technologies. And I think it's very important, and I suppose that we shall have this seminar in Philippines. But I'd like to put the question which we should discuss maybe in this seminar and maybe today also, the use of digital technologies in monetary sphere. All the major banks and some banks in our country members, declared that they will use the digitalization of currencies, so-called digital national currencies. It is important to know that national digital currencies can be used in foreign trade transactions in a very efficient way because they are not dependent from banks. We can arrange the trade payments for trade for different transactions and settlement mechanisms for digital currencies, use blockchain and other instruments, and we could avoid sanctions which are implemented through the banks. So this creates very new opportunities for trade transactions, and if our national banks will use digital national currencies for foreign trade purposes, then entrepreneurs can easily arrange the stabilizing mechanisms, organize the exchange in these digital currencies, and use their own channel of payments, which are do not need financial intermediates like banks. And this will make transactions much easier and cheap. Now banks use a lot of different instruments to increase prices for transactions, whereas commissions, risk estimations, and so forth. Using digital currencies, we can avoid all those commissions and make international transactions very simple and very cheap. So we have a lot of opportunities, a lot of challenges before us. And the final slide, please. And I suppose that we should work more intensively in the coming years to conduct more seminars, conferences, business events, which will be targeting on those bottlenecks which we have to overcome in order to optimize our trade, investments, and create more opportunities for business communities which play the major role in our cooperation and economic development. I think that all those issues which we usually discuss, including technical regulation, custom regulation, trade arrangements, digitalizations, the growth of services, especially tourism, which was mentioned this morning. So all this agenda is still very important, and I hope that these days of Eurasian Economic Union in ASEAN will give impulse for our further cooperation.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your comprehensive analysis and remarks. And I would say that later on we have one speaker from the Philippines on the digital economy, so maybe we can also address some questions that you raised to her. We're moving to our next speaker. I would like to pass the floor to His Excellency Mr. Dmitry Volvach. He will join us online. He's a Deputy Minister of Economic Development of the Russian Federation. Please share your remarks on the economic agenda of our cooperation. The floor is yours.
Dear colleagues, dear ASEAN member states, ASEAN Secretariat, ASEAN and EAEU business community, and Eurasian Economic Commission colleagues. I am delighted to welcome you to the EAEU Days at the ASEAN headquarters in Jakarta. Thank you for your attention in our integration association. 5 years have passed since the Eurasian Economic Commission and ASEAN countries concluded the Memorandum of Understanding on Economic Cooperation. This memorandum created a framework for a dialogue platform for discuss a wide range of issues related to the integration bloc's interaction. During this time, we have established close contacts with the ASEAN Secretariat and organized joint events aimed at sharing integration experience and establishing mechanisms of direct interaction between our business communities. The EAEU is open for cooperation, and under current challenging conditions, the Union has confirmed its sustainability. The EAEU proved itself as an effective tool for economic development and increasing the welfare of member states and of our citizens. Since the EAEU was established, mutual trade between member states has almost doubled, while with the external partners, it has also grown significantly by 60%, reaching $923 billion US. According to the National Statistical Services, in the first 8 months of 2023, compared to the same period of 2022, the mutual trade of EAEU member states grew by another 9% in value terms, from 51 to 55.5 billion US. We have reached the trajectory of stable growth of the EAEU GDP by 3% in 9 months of this year to the same period of 2022. If we turn to the country statistics, a number of countries of the Union in 2023 show outstanding results in terms of GDP growth. The real GDP of Armenia grew by 9.7%, Kazakhstan by 4.7%, Kyrgyzstan by 4.2%, Belarus by 3.5%, Russia by almost 3%, despite unprecedented sanctions pressure on economies of Russia and Belarus. First of all, I'd like to know that the development of trade and economic cooperation with ASEAN remains one of the key issues for Russia and the EAEU. The EAEU-ASEAN mutual trade develops dynamically. According to the ASEAN Statistical Service, the EAEU's foreign trade turnover with ASEAN in 2022 totaled $17.9 billion US. Exports from ASEAN countries accounted for 5.2 billion, while imports accounted for 12.7 billion US. In 2022, ASEAN's exports to the EAEU were based on food products and agricultural raw materials, 40.3%, machinery, equipment and vehicles, 32.7%, chemical products, rubber, 13.4%, textile products, footwear, 7.7%, metals and metal products, 1.6%, mineral fuels, 1.5%, wood and pulp and paper products, 0.4%, raw leather, and 0.4% either. In ASEAN imports from the EAEU countries in 2022, a significant share was accounted for by mineral products, almost 50%, metals and metal products, almost 18%, chemical products, rubber, 16.5%, pearls, precious stones, metals, 7%, food products and agricultural raw materials, 5.2%, textile products, footwear, 1.7%, wood and pulp and paper products, 1.5%, machinery, equipment and vehicles, 1%. We can see readiness for the Southeast Asian countries to establish a constructive dialogue with EAEU on a mutually advantageous basis. This is confirmed by active joint work on bilateral and multilateral platforms with the framework of intergovernmental commissions and implementation of joint progress, and also by Russia-ASEAN dialogue. Since this year, the economics of countries of the region have gradually begun to recover from the negative effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. By the end of 2022, the GDP growth rate was 5.6%. The foreign trade turnover of the ASEAN countries by the end of 2022 increased by 11.8% and amounted to $3.8 trillion, according to WTO data. Congratulations to our colleagues from the ASEAN countries on this significant achievement. ASEAN countries traditionally conduct a comprehensive policy and actively develop cooperation both with dialogue partners, including Russia, and with other regional associations, including EAEU. We support this approach and are ready to extend our trade and economic cooperation through trade liberalization and removal of barriers. The EAEU in EAEU, we systematically build up an infrastructure for interaction with all parties which are interested in. This is not only about creating a motivational basis for new participants to join the EAEU and join as observers. We also pay considerable attention to free trade agreements and flexible sectoral cooperation with key partners, for example, in transport, mutual recognition of electronic shipping documents, food, and energy. The dialogue with external partners is developing very intensively. The following EAEU trade agreements are currently in force: an agreement on free trade with Vietnam, Serbia, Singapore, and a temporary agreement with Iran, leading to the formation of a free trade zone. A non-preferential agreement on trade and economic cooperation with China. We are planning to sign a full-scale free trade agreement with Iran this December to increase the scope of current temporary agreement and make it permanent. Besides, we expect to reach final agreements with our partners from Egypt next year and to deepen trade and economic cooperation with India. We have also negotiations on free trade agreements with the United Arab Emirates and Indonesia. We have already held 2 rounds of negotiations with Indonesia. The third round is scheduled on the end of 2023. We can also note significant progress in the reapproachment of our position. In addition to development of agreement, we are ready to create favorable conditions for mutual trade through the development of digitalization on electronic commerce. We know that this domain is actively developing in ASEAN countries. We are ready to exchange experience and implement joint projects in this field. This work is already in progress. In February of this year, the Ministry of Economic Development of the Russian Federation, in cooperation with the ASEAN Coordinating Committee on Micro and Small and Medium Enterprises, prepared and published a review on digitalization of MSME in Russia and ASEAN countries. The review contains a recommendation for further promotion of the interests of small and medium enterprises, and as well as the exchange of experience in the area of businesses support. Also on March 1st this year, representatives of the EEC, together with the ASEAN Secretariat, organized an online seminar, Digital Transformation in the EAEU and ASEAN. With regard to the proposition from ASEAN, a second seminar of this issue is planned in 2024 in the Philippines. The seminar is planned to be implemented in the format of a project through the Russia-ASEAN dialogue relationship. In addition, representatives of the EEC took part in the format of a video conference in the roundtable Russia-ASEAN cooperation in the field of electronic commerce, organized by the Ministry of Economic Development of Russian Federation jointly with the ASEAN Secretariat on August this year. I'd like to thank the ASEAN partners for their active participation in these events. We know that the Ministry of Digital Development, Communication and Mass Media in Russia is working out the possibility of starting specialized consultations of senior officials of Russia-ASEAN on digital economy. In addition, we see potential to develop a sustainable dialogue between the EAEU and ASEAN in technical regulation and circulation of medicines and medical devices. These competences have been transferred to the supranational level in the EAEU, and we are interested in developing work to remove technical barriers that hinder our mutual trade. We purpose to join our efforts and reach a new level of cooperation in this area. We pay great attention to cooperation in the field of sustainable development and combating climate change. Given the high vulnerability of countries of the region to the effects of climate change, we see prospects for strengthening cooperation on this track, both on work on mutual recognition of carbon units and on the promotion of Russia adaptation solutions. Through bilateral cooperation, the Ministry of Economic Development of the Russian Federation is working on the conclusion of Memorandum of Understanding on climate change and low carbon development with the relevant ministries of Vietnam and Thailand. Indonesia is also interested in cooperation in this area. In the future, we could expand cooperation with focusing on development of joint standards and taxonomies for sustainable development, including the sustainable development between the EAEU and ASEAN countries. Within the framework of the Union, we have done a lot of synchronize the position of member states on climate issues. For today, we have fully implemented the roadmap for climate cooperation, established the Bank of Climate Technologies and digital initiatives with the best solutions in various sectors with minimal damage to the environment, create a model taxonomy aimed at developing common approaches to the green finance. Now we hold conclusions on sharing experience and carbon development with the Union's key trading partners, China and Vietnam. I'd like to mention that within the framework of bilateral trade and investment cooperation, active cooperation is being conducted between the business communities through the organization and holding in round tables and business forums. With the support of the Russia-ASEAN Business Council, in the framework of the second Eurasian Economic Forum, we organized a business breakfast EAEU Indonesia to discuss priority tasks for deepening cooperation, primarily in terms of building up supply chains, developing digital infrastructure, and eliminating non-tariff barriers. Moreover, the EAEU-ASEAN Business Dialogue is regularly held within the framework of St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. I'd like to thank Deputy Secretary General of ASEAN for ASEAN Economic Country, Savinder Singh, and Chairman of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, Arshad Rasjid, for participating in the business dialogue that took place on the 15th of June this year. As we can see, the cooperation between the ASEAN and EAEU is quite close, and we are ready to further develop cooperation on a mutually beneficial basis. Thank you for your attention and have an interesting discussion today.
Your Excellency, thank you for your remarks. Thank you very much. So we are moving forward, and I would like to give the floor to Ms. Latifah Abdul Latif, the Assistant Director, Head of Analysis and Monitoring on Finance and Socio-Economic Division of the ASEAN Secretariat. She is responsible for the issues which include sustainability agenda. Could you please share your vision? Yes, you can talk.
Can you hear me now? Yes. Oh, okay. All right. So thank you very much. Hello? Okay, this is better. Okay, so basically I'm just going to share ASEAN's decarbonization initiatives and how it relates to the businesses or business sectors. There are two key policy documents that ASEAN has adopted, and I will unpack one by one. And if you can go to the next slide, let me just start off with the first policy document. Some of you may have heard about the Framework for Circular Economy for ASEAN Economic Community. So this framework was actually adopted by the economic ministers in 2021, and this was under the chairmanship of Brunei Darussalam. And the reason that ASEAN Economic Community came up with this framework, given that there need to be a clear structured pathway to be able to support the economic sector to move towards a more sustainable consumption and production processes. And right now, the framework is currently being implemented. And as you can see, you can see on the slides, a diagram, there are three strategic goals of this framework to be able, for ASEAN to be able to achieve economic resilience, to also achieve resource efficiency, and also sustainable growth. And in coming up with the framework, there are 6 principles that has been adopted. I'm just going to broadly share with you that the principles that was used is to ensure that each unique circumstances of ASEAN, for example, the diverse economic circumstances, different level of development, and the impact of the circular economy activities should be considered in coming up with the framework. And from that, there are 5 strategic priorities that has been outlined in the framework. And if you can go to the next slide. So the 5 strategic priorities are the one that will help guide our sectoral bodies in coming up with initiatives to support the implementation of the framework. So what would be critical to be able to support the economic community move towards circular economy? One is standard harmonization and mutual recognition. This is to ensure that there's transparency given the diverse policy and regulations related to circular economy across ASEAN member states. And the second priority to be considered is that we must be able to ensure trade openness and trade facilitation to enable the movement, the transboundary movement of circular products and services across the region. And the third priority is to be able to leverage on digitalization and innovation in order to move towards a more circular processes. For example, if we can use, we can also use blockchain or AI to be able to identify the source of emission and design the specific solution in order to mitigate the emission at source. The fourth one is one of the biggest puzzle that has been difficult to solve is the access to financing. And there's such a huge gap in ASEAN in terms of the demand or mobilizing green financing. And we also need to focus on what kind of activities that could help businesses, particularly MSMEs in ASEAN, to be able to access green financing at a very reasonable cost. And finally, to look at efficient use of energy and other resources. This is because energy underlies all our economic activities, and this is one of the activities where there's already a lot of momentum in ASEAN and can be built upon. So these are the 5 strategic priorities that has been outlined to help support the implementation of the framework. And next slide, please. So from that 5 strategic priorities, we've actually went back to relevant sectoral bodies across ASEAN, and we also consulted the private sectors in coming up with the implementation plan for this framework. And the implementation plan was adopted by the Economic Council, ASEAN Economic Council this year. It basically contains 67 initiatives, and it focuses on 3 high-impact sectors. The sectors are agriculture sector, energy sector, and transport sector. And why these sectors have been selected? Because they were the in our scoping exercise, they were the highest emitters compared to other sector. So the 67 initiatives cuts across all these three sectors in the first phase of implementation that will run between 2023 to 2030. And the initiatives basically falls into 4 broad categories. It looks at standards, it looks at trade facilitation, access to financing, and capacity building. And at the same time, there's also another work stream that's ongoing in parallel, where we are also looking at specific work programs that will run for 5 years that focuses on capacity building to help support the implementation, because capacity or gap is one of the biggest factor that we've identified in our scoping exercise when coming up with the framework. And you can see the work program actually covers 5 specific areas: training and capacity building, education, information and awareness, partnership and collaboration, sharing of data and best practices, as well as regulatory and institutional framework. Next slide, please. So, so that was mainly where we are with regards to the circular economy framework. And in terms of implementation, the circular economy framework has, like I mentioned, started this year, and there have been some progress in terms of the groundwork for the implementation. And this also relates to the strategy for carbon neutrality, where I'm trying to segue into our second policy document. So, strategy for carbon neutrality is the bigger umbrella in terms of ASEAN's ambition towards a low carbon future. And the strategy was adopted this year in September. And there are 2 folds that drives the motivation behind coming up with the strategy. It was a mandate that we received from the economic ministers for ASEAN to be able to come up with a structured pathway, with a plan towards a carbon neutral future. And like I mentioned, the motivations were 2-fold. Of course, it's decarbonization, climate crisis mitigation, but at the same time, there's also external economic pressure, where we realize that the rising climate-related regulation, for example, the carbon border adjustment mechanism from the EU, that may have implications on ASEAN exports globally if we are not able to address this or address our carbon footprint. So we came up with the strategy, which was adopted in September, like I mentioned. And I'm going to just briefly, I don't know whether you can see clearly, but there are 8 strategies, 8 key strategies, and you can see at the top of the tree is where we sort of like categorize it as the one that will drive economic growth. And these 4 strategies looks at enhancing, I'm going to read it from the slides, enhancing or accelerating green value chain integration. Basically what it means is to identify what are the strengths given ASEAN's different structural advantages that we can look at to enhance green value chain. For example, when we look at EV, electronic vehicles, there are some countries within ASEAN that have a huge endowment of critical minerals that could be used for batteries, for EV, and some ASEAN countries that have other expertise or other strength that they can use to be able to complete the whole value chain for EV. So one is to identify the green value chain integration, and second, to look at regional circular economy supply chain, and this is where I mentioned earlier it relates to this framework for circular economy. This is because there's a huge potential of circular economy, and if you look at the decarbonization using renewable resources, for example, renewable energy only addresses 55% of the GHG emission, and the remaining 45% actually can be addressed through a more sustainable way of consumption and production. So circular economy is a big component that has been integrated into the strategy. And the third one is connecting green infrastructure to market. So what we mean by this is that right now they need to be able to, we need to be able to have a reliable infrastructure if you want to be able to transmit the green electrons or renewable energy across the region, and to also provide or enable market to be able to participate in this. And therefore, one of the strategies is to look at how we can connect market with green infrastructure to be able to provide decarbonization solution. And fourth, was it interoperable carbon market? So ASEAN has about 36% of high quality green capital that's a very high candidate or potential for high quality carbon credit. And in order for ASEAN to be able to draw global capital to this region, we must be able, I mean, for example, I think earlier one of the panelists mentioned about taxonomy. There need to be interoperability across ASEAN, and not just across ASEAN, also globally. So we must be able to understand what does green, what does green investment or green assets mean, and must be understood at the same, on the same page. So those are the four economic drivers that we see at the top of the branches. And the bottom four are the fundamentals requirements that needs to be put in place. And this refers to attracting and deploying green capital. Again, it relates to capital in order to build effective pathway to attract green capitals to ASEAN. And one of the initiatives that has been looked at, given that the cost of capital in this part of the world for what you call renewable energy projects is actually 9 to 12% higher compared to conventional infrastructure project. And there need to be a better way, and one of the initiatives that has been identified is actually to attract fund managers to be located within this region, so they'll be able to assess the risk closer to the project. Because right now, we are relying on fund managers that maybe perhaps residing in London or New York. They're not able to understand the actual reality on the ground. So that's another a strategy. And then the next one is credible and common standards. This also relates to the taxonomy, where we want to be able to ensure that there's also commonality across the region, and also to facilitate, to help businesses, for example, for a common, for a standard MRV or carbon reporting across the region. The next strategy is green best practice sharing. I think this is quite common, and it's understood how this is still a nascent topic, and we need to learn from each other. And finally, green talent development as well as mobility. This is also another part that has been, a huge gap within the region, and not just develop green talent, but also ensure that we can mobilize the talent across the region, but at the same time ensure that there's no brain drain in certain areas where it will affect achieving the country's SDG goals. Next slide, please. So this is my final slides, actually. I mentioned earlier 16 initiatives. So from the 8 key strategies, it is then further developed into 16 initiatives, where we would term these as low-hanging fruits, where it can be mobilized between short and medium term. And also, the 16 initiatives will deliver 4 key outcomes for ASEAN. It will help ASEAN to boost our green industries. It will enable interoperability across ASEAN. It will establish global and credible standards for ASEAN, where we'll be able to exceed global standards. And finally, it will build green capabilities for the region. And you can see that there are specific initiatives that is tagged to each of the outcomes. And I just want to highlight one specific initiative that I think would be of interest to you. It's in relation to the circular. It's in relation to the second outcome with regards to enabling interoperability. So one of the initiatives, I think if you can see at the top, is to upgrade our ASEAN Trade in Goods Agreement to include circular products and elements. So right now, our trade in goods agreement is being upgraded and being negotiated, and we already have a mandate to include circular products. This is something that our negotiators is currently doing, and it provides us an opportunity to explore to what extent we can include circularity within our trade agreements and to address the intersection between trade and circular economy. I'll give you an example why we've looked into our trade agreements, because in order for circular economy to be economically viable and also effective, it requires economies of scale. And we want to be able to move the circular products or waste or agricultural waste across the border. For example, across ASEAN, the used cooking oil is a prime feedstock for biofuel, for example, the sustainable aviation fuel. But the amount of collection across ASEAN countries, for example, in Malaysia, Indonesia, is between 25% to 45%. When we look at China, they collected used cooking oil up to 80%. And this is a huge feedstock. This is a high potential feedstock for sustainable aviation fuel that can be processed at the refinery in Singapore. So we must be able to create a supply chain that allows this feedstock to be moved across the region in order for us, for circular economy to really take effect and have impact. And there are several other activities that you can see up there. And I also would like to invite you to download the framework as well as the strategy on our website. You'll be able to have a little bit more understanding of the, the motivation behind it and also the details of the strategy that has been shared. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And the questions or the issues that you have raised about the sustainable development and the carbon issues are inseparably connected to the energy sector. Therefore, I would like to give the floor to our next speaker, to Dr. Nukiaga Utama, the Executive Director of ASEAN Center for Energy. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Danyar. I'm glad to be here. I just want to briefly update the energy sectors and the cooperations amongst member states, as well as what will be the blueprint energy activities and the milestones. Before deep dive on all of the activities, we all know that both EAEU and ASEAN economy are composed of mostly emerging economies, and the ASEAN economy is projected to grow for more than 4 times for the next 3 to 4 decades. And in order to securing the economic development with 5 to 6 percentage of annual growth, the energy sectors have to keep up with approximately 3 to 4% per year. 3 to 4% is not a small amount, it is a big amount. In order to secure those economic growth, the regions aims to enhance energy connectivity and market integration, and we also try to achieve energy security, accessibility, affordability, and sustainability in energy sectors. So basically, the energy sectors is focusing on the energy security and affordability as our main activities in the sectors. In terms of this primary energy demand, it is projected that it could be a quadruple between the same periods up until 2050, 2060. And according to our ASEAN Energy Outlook 7, in the baseline scenario, the energy regional efforts on the energy efficiency and renewable energy measures could limit this to 2.7 times growth. So rather than we open up all of those baseline energy demand without any measures, so we try to reduce those by energy efficiency, and of course the renewable energy, then we can reduce up until 2.7 times growth rather than 4 times. So meaning that we can keep up our economic growth, maintaining 5 to 6% growth per year up until 2050, but the growth of energy we can reduce up until 2.7 instead of 4 times by energy efficiency. In the energy sectors, globally, people are thinking that we have to transition from fossil fuel to renewable energy. In the current status, the fossil fuel still plays a big role in ASEAN, especially the oil products in transportation sectors, and also coal and gas in power and industrial sectors. It is also crucial for ASEAN to optimize and secure these energy resources while pursuing the energy diversification. So basically, in the next 20 to 30 years, the biggest sectors needed for the energy mainly coming from the transport and industry, covering in more than 70%. So by reducing and introducing the diversification of energy supply, meaning that the energy security can be also being, delivered very well. Because if you're looking at the energy security, meaning that the stability of the regional economic as well as socio-politic, that's why the region are keen to pursue the energy security and affordability rather than the others kind of approach. Another important parts in terms of this providing energy security is the boosting the interconnectivity. We all know that the recent progress on this ASEAN power grid, the success of the Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore power integration project last year, we managed to trade the electron approximately around 265 gigawatt hours for the last 2 years. That was coming from 100 megawatt project power capacity from Laos PDR coming from hydropower and transferring or trading to Singapore. And this year we're discussing on those upgraded to 300 megawatt. And at the same year, this year, Indonesia during the its chairmanship in last August in Bali, they initiate another interconnection project. We call it Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, working on the interconnection between northern part of Kalimantan with Sabah. At the same time, Indonesia also plan to expand the interconnection through the interconnection basically coming from a submersible transmission line from Peninsula Malaysia to Sumatra. And these two activities are already endorsed during the ASEAN Energy Minister meeting back in Bali in August. With that, our office, the ASEAN Center on Energy, ASEAN Center for Energy, also conducting 2 feasibility studies for that particular interconnection projects. And according to the ASEAN Interconnection Master Plan Studies 3, we realized that the vision of APG is very crucial to facilitate and leverage renewable energy potential across the member states. And this connection will both improve the energy security and improve sustainability. According to our report and also IEA, the region cannot push more than 40% of variable RE without interconnectivity. So basically interconnectivity, apart from providing a secure energy supply and also affordable energy supply, we also can increase the share of RE specifically coming from variable RE. Variable RE is, for example, like photovoltaic and wind. And the same studies, the AM3, also mapping the biggest potential of VRE from wind and solar coming from the northern part of the region, which is northern Vietnam. So we have those big potential, and without interconnection, those variable RE from this particular solar PV can also only being consumed by Vietnam basically, but with the interconnection, the electron can be transferred up until Indonesia or even Philippines. Another important part of the interconnectivity for this particular project is that if we only rely on VRE from solar and wind without any storage, that will be a very big problem. If you are familiar with the duck curve, duck is like the neck of the duck. So when we increase the solar PV in the daytime, and suddenly it stops because the solar is not shining anymore during evening, then it have to be covered by natural gas or coal power plant. So the bigger the solar, the bigger gas or coal will have to ramp up to fill the gap during evening and nighttime. So the problem of the dark curve is that when you increase your VRE from solar and wind, the curve of the dark neck will be going even deeper. So currently we call it the camel duck because it's very deep, because the high renewable energy coming from solar and wind. That's happening in California, for example, but not yet in ASEAN. So to cover those, to handle those issues, we need to have a storage. The biggest storage potential, I'm not talking about the chemical storage like lithium or other battery, but I'm talking about the pump hydro storage. Using hydropower to store the water, pumping up the water during the peak of solar, and then utilizing it by using gravity, running the turbine during nighttime. So we call it the pump storage. You're pumping up and then you use the energy by gravity. So those potential is in Kalimantan and Sumatra mainly. If you're looking at the map, Kalimantan is Indonesia, Sumatra is also in Indonesia. So the potential of variable RE is in the Vietnam, far away, 3,000 kilometers to Sumatra and Kalimantan. If we are not being connected, we cannot increase the VRE because we cannot utilize the pump storage. So definitely this ASEAN Power Grid is very important right now. Our main focus on the ASEAN ministerial meeting to really being connected. Because of those, we can increase VRE, we can secure our energy supply, as well as we can have more affordable electron, rather than if we are doing it one by one or doing it with country by country. So apart from this electricity interconnectivity or interconnection, we also have sectors on which is oil and gas, energy security through interconnectivity. Currently, we are having approximately around 3,600 kilometer gas pipeline connecting 6 countries. For you, if not familiar with gas is the cheapest way to transfer is by pipeline. Other than piping up, we can liquefy the gas. Then we call it LNG or liquefied natural gas. And those we need regasification unit to regasify the LNG to be gas and then distributed. So in the region, we do have 3,600 gas pipeline connecting 6 countries. I think that will be needed to be expanded because again, we do have quite certain amount of gas resources and we have to utilize it efficiently. The reason why, because in some of we're not talking about power sectors, basically if we want to focus on the gas, some of the industrial sectors we can't easily replace to electrification. For example, the thermal needed for industrial sectors and stable energy supply, stable heat for industrial sectors. Those need mostly either coal or gas. Up until this moment, we don't have any technology to replace those. So that's why this is very important for us to having very stable gas supply for these sectors. On the power generation, we know that perhaps we can replace gas power plant or coal power plant with hydropower or geothermal, but for industrial sector, it's rather difficult. So that's why gas is coming very important for the future economic growth in the region. Apart from gas, coal, and also electricity in the power sectors, we also have interconnectivity in terms of the bioenergy infrastructure interconnectivity. I think this is one of the most important things, because if we talk about energy security, we have to looking at on the indigenous energy that we have. Southeast Asia are rich with the bioenergy. That's why it's very important to utilize it and make use of this bioenergy in the form of biomass and biofuel. Biomass for industrial sector to replace the coal. Biofuel is in the form of liquid to replace the imported oil that's currently is 70% on transport sector is coming from oil. So we have to replace those to the biofuel. And our strategy is preparing the roadmap of bioenergy. Currently, we are doing it with a focal point in Southeast Asia. I think I'm ending that statement that the indigenous energy supply is important, looking at what we have, and we try to explore those more even further. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak. Thank you very much. We know that the energy sector is very crucial for our interaction between our countries. Now we are moving to our next speaker. We are moving to another area we are moving to digital economy, and I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Amor Maklang, the convener of the Digital Filipinas. She will join us online. Hello, Amor. Please, the floor is yours.
Здравствуйте and selamat sore to all of you. Hello, Daniar. I'm so happy to see you. I look forward to seeing you and also at the same time Chairman Ivan in Manila. Today we just opened. I'm sorry I could not be with you in Jakarta for this very important ASEAN and EAEU meetup. I know that this is just going to be the start of what we had talked about potentially with the EEC and also with the Russia-ASEAN Business Council, which is how do we get these two regions very closely connected together in an era where people are either seen as friendly or unfriendly. We want to say that ASEAN, and specifically the Philippines, will continue to be one of the friendliest, if not supportive markets of the EEC and the EAEU countries. Although, from my understanding, we are still awaiting the formal signing of a partnership between the EEC and the Philippines. The private sector will not be deterred. I wanted to share with you some of the I wanted to share with you 8 things that I think would be of interest to you when it comes to the digital economies in ASEAN. So when you talk about ASEAN, what comes to mind? Number one, following the DEFA or the Digital Economies Framework Agreement, there are 6 things that I'd like to share with everyone here that might be an immediate commercial bridgeway between our two regions. First and foremost is, we here in ASEAN, we love to dance and sing. And why is this important? In terms of being a social media capital globally, ASEAN is tops. We are some of the biggest consumers for what you call culture tech. Indonesia and the Philippines, for one, is one of the biggest consumers of K-pop, right? Now, I'm very pleased to let you know that in Moscow, through one of our partners, GMA News, we have been exporting one of our greatest exports, and that is the telenovela. So that is an incredible area, an initial area of cooperation, especially in the creative digital economies. So that's the first thing you need to remember. We love to sing, we love to dance. The second is we also love to shop. The fastest growing e commerce market in the whole world is ASEAN. And that is because, number three, we are mobile first. In the Philippines, for example, there is a 115 million population, and yet we have 168 active mobile phones. So I was teasing Daniar and Chairman Ivan when I first came to Moscow on business, and I said, for every Filipino born, they're actually born with two phones. And this is very important because number four, this precipitated the fintech revolution in the region. ASEAN is the largest fintech, fastest growing fintech market in the world. And I'm very pleased to let everyone know in Jakarta that between the Philippines and Indonesia, we have actually shared this week. So from the 20th to the 22nd is the Digital Filipinas Festival, and also one of our highlight festivals is the Philippine FinTech Festival. I won't even be able to finish the 22nd because I'll be able to take the first plane out of Manila, and at midnight I land in Jakarta. Yes, I look forward to seeing and meeting many of you in Jakarta this Thursday, where we will be signing with AFTEC, which is the largest fintech association in Jakarta. Hello, Papandu. I think he's somewhere flying in from APEC to Jakarta very soon. Also, number five, because we are such a young population, think about it. Our average age in ASEAN is 30 years old and below. In the Philippines, and that is across in Indonesia, and in the Philippines, even slightly younger at 30. And what does that make of us? We have the highest adaptability when it comes to nascent technologies. As a matter of fact, in terms of esports, um, Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia are some of the top most esports market in the world. And for those of you who probably don't care about esports, I have to tell you, you must, because the investments that are going into esports are even far bigger than the investments going into movies and music. I'm pleased to let you know that we were actually just in Kazan a few weeks back to celebrate the games of the future. And this is the coming together of everything digital. And I'm pleased to note that the EAEU countries are actually leading in this front. Last but not the least, and this is actually one of the festivals that we highlight, um, the business of ASEAN is the business of halal. And the business of halal, one of the biggest markets would be ASEAN. At close to 40% of all our brothers in ASEAN being Muslim, it makes us one of the biggest markets for halal, which is at this point at 7 trillion US dollars. So all of those programs are actually highlighted in our Digital Pilipinas Festival, where our theme, and I have a special shout out to our ASEAN Secretary General, Secretary General Kim. When we met with him in Manila, we said that our theme is ASEAN, World Meet ASEAN in a Digital Pilipinas. But I think in closing, Daniar, I want to be able to say to our EAEU partners, I'm actually on mobile right now because I'm meeting up our International Digital Economies Association, and Samat is with us, right? So the reason why he couldn't be there is because he's with us in Manila. And we have a philosophy here in ASEAN where one goes, we all go. So that whether you choose to enter into Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, and our emerging markets, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, or the Philippines or Brunei, that is the first right step. Why? Because 40% of the global GDP will be in ASEAN in 2030. And ladies and gentlemen, that is just 7 years from now. Over to you, Daniar.
Thank you, Amor. Thank you very much for your sharing your opportunities and challenges for business. Thank you so much. See you. So we're moving next to our next speaker, Mr. Ivan Polyakov, the chairman of the Russia-ASEAN Business Council. Please share your visions on the business cooperation.
Thank you. Oh, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, I'll try to share my point of view briefly. ASEAN and Eurasian Union have been interacting successfully for a long time. The ASEAN-Russian Strategic Partnership Comprehensive Action Plan on 2021-2025 highlights the importance of cooperation in the framework of 5 strategic areas of the ASEAN Master Plan: sustainable infrastructure, digital innovation, seamless logistics, excellence, and people mobility. Today, I would like to note Russia has launched and is successfully implementing the National Technological Initiative. This is a long-term complex project creating conditions for Russian companies to become leaders on new high-tech markets, will define global economic structure for the upcoming 15-20 years. The National Technological Initiative focuses on new global markets will be shaped in future. Most markets will be network-based and will inherit approaches already exist in the internet or will use the net infrastructure. I am confident we need to work even more closely with each other to achieve common goals and the best outcomes. I believe the establishing of a group of practical interaction or the Russia-ASEAN Strategic Economic Planning Group, which will include representatives of public and private sectors, will allow us to multiply the size of our economic cooperation in the next 2 years and exceed $100 billion point per year. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Chairman, for sharing your vision, especially on the promotion of the high-tech challenges. We're moving forward to our next speaker, Pakridit Ratam, who is a big friend of Russia, Eurasian Economic Union. You've been a lot of times in Eurasian countries, so please share your opinion on behalf of the KADIN.
Thank you, Daniar. Well, I'd like to greet also Excellencies, ambassadors, my friends, and I really appreciate the attendance of associations of Indonesian businesses. I see a couple of associations sitting here in the room. And this is important, Daniel. I think because we're talking about strengthening ASEAN-EAEU ties and what the business communities can do. And if you look at it, at the end of the day, regardless of the framework, you build a framework, but at the end of the day, trade of goods grow through business-to-business relations, to business transactions. So governments and I think institutions would would discuss useful things such as the FTA. I think the Indonesian EAEU negotiation at this point is in the second phase, and I think we are going to go to the third discussion in Bali, I think between December 13th and 15th. And I think that is important. That is important because I think at the end of the day, what we need to do is to get trade easier. And I think it was mentioned before by Pa Glaziers. And in that respect, I think FTA is important in two things. I mean, they ease transactions, yes. And if you distinguish between big businesses and small businesses, usually the big businesses, they take care of themselves, okay? They market and they go on and they do things. But the FTA, the absence of tariffs or lower tariffs is very helpful. Now, where it also is very important is with the medium and small enterprises that want to go from ASEAN countries into the EAEU countries. And there, it is also very important. And these are things like, not necessarily tariffs, but these are things like ease of inspections, for instance. The regulations for instance, let me give you an example. I mean, if we produce goods and would like to export to let's say, Russia, for instance, we get our goods inspected here and then again there. So I think if there were only one authority that would coordinate the two things, that would make things easier in terms of time and in terms of expenses, which I believe is very important. And this is important why as well? Because if you look at the trade numbers between the two groups has been increasing. And I only know the numbers for Indonesia and EAEU on top of my head, but I think it's gone up by about 30%. And with the let's say the FTA discussions that are going on, and I also see what I also like to speak about, and I think this is a very good example, is that there's been so many more business delegations in the past year or so. I think Pa Alex can attest to that. I mean, there's never a month or any 2 weeks without any Russian business delegation coming to Indonesia. So that is, at the end of the day, what is important in increasing trade between the two countries, the two groups, the two groupings. I mean, having more delegations coming to Indonesia, having more delegations coming to the EAEU countries, because at the end of the day, as I said, the FTA gives you a framework, but then once you want to do the transactions, it has to be business to business. And how you reach that, how do you get an understanding, how do you build trust, that is through visits. And I'm a firm believer in that, and I commend the efforts that I've seen from my colleagues from Russia, from Belarus. I've also met a business delegation from Belarus the other day, and I think that is the real thing on the ground that we need to promote and to push further and further, because I truly believe that the potential of greater trade between the two groupings is much, much bigger than was presented. So I think I'm very glad that you've also invited business people like Hanzela here, who can also give you, because we're not only talking about products, but there's also goods, there's also services, there's also tourism that need to increase between the two groupings. I think I'll leave it with that.
Thank you, Pak. Thank you very much for sharing these visions, especially on trade issues. And we are switching to our next speaker, to Ms. Hanzela Kusumamenggala, who is the founder and CEO of Mana Group Indonesia and also the chairman of Indonesia, Russia, and CIS countries corporation. You are working on the ground with the trade of goods and services. So please share your experience.
Yes, thank you very much, Daniel. So basically, thank you very much, Eurasian Economic Commission, who already invite me, also to Russian ASEAN Business Council, who already also invite me to this event. I would like to share my gratitude to everyone, the one who give us a chance to start the business, starting from the Embassy of Russia in Indonesia, also the Trade Representative Office, which is Mr. Alexander Spilin there was helping us, that we can finally understand that there are another market for Indonesia, and then we want to open for trade, tourism, and investment. Other than that, we also start with cultural business because everything is economic. We are trying with the trade, we want to sell Indonesian goods to all of the countries, and then we want to start, now we are starting with Russia and CIS countries, and then in the tourism business, now we are preparing for our next project, which is helped by, of course, the trade representative of Russia in Indonesia, that we will make Umrah Plus program, that we will bring Indonesian tourists to Kazan and to Moscow. And then we will be having the launch of this program on the 27th November, like I told you, Daniel. So we are very excited. Like other than the tourism part, like other than the investor and the trade, we want to also have the tourism business as something that can make economic in between our countries, like running. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We wish you good luck in your launching of new projects. Therefore, I think we are running to the end of our session, of our roundtable. I would like to thank our honorable speakers for sharing their visions and opinions, and I would like to thank all the participants, especially Your Excellencies, ambassadors, and the embassies for being with us today. So, thank you very much to all of you. Thank you again. We are moving to our next session. Thank you. Bye-bye.